My closest friend lured my younger brother, got pregnant on purpose to trap him, and when my family, okay, prepare yourself. Because what I'm about to tell you, it's still hard for me to say out loud, let alone organize in my head. Imagine watching someone you love, your own brother, disappear piece by piece, stolen by the very person who was supposed to be your closest friend. And what if, years later, the only way to get him back was to apologize to his captor? It's a gut-wrenching question I never thought I'd have to answer. I've been sitting on this for weeks, maybe months, because every time I try to talk about it with anyone, they look at me like I'm being dramatic or paranoid or, God forbid, jealous. And honestly, maybe I am all of those things. But that doesn't mean I'm wrong. Marley was my best friend. I need to get that out first because people always jump to conclusions. They act like I'm some controlling older sister who hated every girl that looked at my brother. And that's just not what this is. Marley and I met 5 years ago, back when I was 23 and she was 24. It was in a spin class of all places and we just clicked. Immediately. She was vibrant, spontaneous, always down for whatever adventure we cooked up. We did everything together. Sunday brunches, gym partners, she came to my family's Thanksgiving twice. She was there for my parents' anniversary party. She knew everyone in my life, including my little brother Simon. Simon is 5 years younger than me. When Marley and I became friends, he was 18, fresh out of high school. He was this shy, kind of awkward kid who spent most of his time lost in video games, only really hanging out with his 2 best friends from school. He'd never had a girlfriend. Barely talked to girls, actually. My parents used to joke he was going to be a late bloomer, and we all just accepted that Simon was Simon, and he'd figure things out eventually. But you have to understand who my brother was back then, before all of this happened. He was sweet. Genuinely sweet, in a way that's just rare to find. The kind of guy who would drive 40 minutes in a snowstorm to bring me soup when I was sick. The one who remembered everyone's birthday without needing a Facebook reminder. He'd tear up at animal rescue videos for crying out loud. He trusted people completely, utterly, because he'd never been given a reason not to. Marley was at my parents' house constantly because I was there constantly. I still lived at home during my first year after college. She'd be over for dinner, for movie nights, for random hangouts. She was practically family. And I remember thinking it was cute when Simon would get all nervous around her. Of course he would, right? She was pretty and older and so cool, and he was just 18 and awkward. What I didn't notice, what I completely terrifyingly missed, was that she was noticing him back. And not in a, oh, he's sweet like a little brother, way. I should explain something about Marley that I only understood later, with horrifying clarity. She was 24 when we met, and she'd just gotten out of a 2-year relationship with some guy her age who apparently dumped her for being too controlling. She told me about it once, framing it like he just couldn't handle a strong woman. But now I see it so differently. She wasn't doing great career-wise either, bouncing between part-time jobs, constantly complaining about how nobody appreciated her talents. She had this desperate, gnawing need to feel important, to feel like she was the absolute center of someone's universe. And guys her age? They just weren't giving her that. They had their own lives, their own ambitions, their own opinions. But Simon, this shy, unsuspecting 18-year-old, who looked at her like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever met, who hung on her every single word, who had absolutely no frame of reference for what a normal, healthy relationship looked like. He was perfect for her. The first time something felt truly off was about 3 months after Simon turned 18. I came home early one day and Marley's car was in the driveway. Not weird usually. Except my parents were out and I was supposed to be at work. I walked in, and they were sitting on the couch together, watching something on his laptop. They both jumped, like actually physically startled. Marley laughed it off, said she was just waiting for me and Simon happened to be home, so they were killing time. But then there were other things. She started asking about Simon more. What was he up to? Was he dating anyone? Did he have plans this weekend? She'd make these comments, he's getting so tall. He's really filling out, getting handsome. I laughed it off. Because again, weird, right? She's 24, he's barely legal, and she's my best friend. That's just not how you think about things. About 2 months later, Simon told my parents he had a girlfriend. But he wasn't ready to introduce her yet. My mom was thrilled. My dad made jokes about it being a girl from one of his video games. I was just happy for him. He seemed genuinely excited for the first time in forever. He was smiling more, actually leaving the house caring about how he looked. I found out it was Marley about 4 months into their relationship. And I found out because I walked into her apartment unannounced. Because we did that. We had that kind of friendship. And my brother was in her bed. I cannot describe to you what that felt like. Standing in her doorway, looking at my teenage brother, tangled up in sheets, with my 24-year-old best friend. She didn't even look embarrassed. She looked annoyed that I was there. Simon looked terrified. I left. I turned around, got in my car, and I drove. For like 2 hours. Because I couldn't process what I'd just seen. Then I called Marley. And I let her have it. I screamed. I told her she was disgusting. That he was a kid. That she'd known him since he was in high school, for God's sake. She came to his graduation party. She just let me yell. And when I was done, she said something I will never forget. She told me I didn't understand love. That age was just a number. And that Simon was more of a man than anyone she'd ever been with. She said he made her feel special in a way nobody else ever had. That he actually listened to her. That he appreciated her. That he didn't try to change her or tell her she was too much. She said guys her age were selfish and immature, but Simon treated her like a queen. I told her she was supposed to be mature enough to know this was wrong. She just looked at me, completely unfazed, and said I was just jealous that Simon had found happiness before I did. I told my parents that night. My mom went pale, completely white. My dad looked like he might actually throw up. They confronted Simon immediately. And he just kept repeating that we didn't understand that Marley was different, that she actually saw him as a person when everyone else just treated him like a kid. He said she made him feel important. That's when it clicked. That's when I realized what she'd done. She'd made herself his entire, sole source of validation. She'd positioned herself as the only person who truly understood him, while simultaneously convincing him that his own family didn't. My parents tried to talk sense into him for weeks. They pointed out the age gap, the power imbalance, the sickening fact that she'd been hanging around our house, seemingly just to get close to him. Simon just dug in deeper every time they pushed. He said they were being controlling, that they didn't want him to be happy, that they'd always treated him like a baby, and Marley was the first person who saw him as an adult. About 3 months after I found out, Marley announced she was pregnant. My mom literally collapsed. Not dramatically, you know? Not a faint. She just sat down on the kitchen floor and didn't move for like 10 minutes. My dad started pacing, a nervous wreck. Simon just stood there looking terrified but also weirdly proud, like he'd accomplished something incredible. I found out later that Marley had told Simon she was on birth control. She wasn't. She told him after she got pregnant that it must have failed, but I don't believe that for a second. She saw my family pushing back. She saw the possibility of losing her grip on him, and she locked it down. Permanently. A baby meant he couldn't just walk away. A baby meant she'd always be in his life. No matter what. Marley came over to explain herself. She showed up all sweet, all apologetic. Said she knew this wasn't how anyone wanted things to happen. Said she understood our concerns. Said she loved Simon more than anything, and she was going to be the best mother and the best partner. And we'd all look back on this and laugh someday. My mom actually started to soften. Because Marley was good at this. She knew exactly what to say. Then my dad made a mistake. He suggested that maybe Simon should wait before making any permanent decisions. That maybe he should take some time to think about whether this was really what he wanted for his life at 19. He said maybe they should explore options. Marley's face changed completely. All that sweetness just dropped away. She looked at my dad, and she said calmly, chillingly, that if we tried to convince Simon to abandon his child or abandon her, she would tell everyone he'd forced himself on her. That she had text messages she could edit. That she had photos that could be misinterpreted. That everyone would believe a crying, pregnant woman over some teenage boy nobody took seriously. She said it so calmly. Like she was reading a grocery list. My dad tried to call her bluff and she pulled out her phone. And she showed him a draft email to the local police department. She'd already written it out. Detailed. Convincing. Full of dates and times that were real, but contexts that were completely fabricated. She told him to imagine what that would do to Simon's life, his future, his reputation. She wasn't asking for anything, she said, except that we stay out of her relationship. She said if we accepted her and treated her like family, if we stopped trying to convince Simon she was wrong for him, she would delete everything. And we could all move forward. My parents looked at Simon, expecting him to be horrified, to finally see what she was. But he just stood there. And he said Marley told him about the insurance policy, because she knew we might react badly. He called it an insurance policy. He said he trusted her not to use it unless she had to. He said we'd forced her to protect herself. That's when I knew. We'd lost him. The next 2 years were a nightmare. A slow, agonizing nightmare of watching my brother disappear. He moved in with her immediately after the baby Luna was born. They got married at the courthouse 6 months later, and none of us were invited. We'd find out about major life events through Facebook posts. He stopped coming to family dinners. He stopped answering calls unless Marley was there to supervise. When he did visit, he seemed quieter, always looking at her before he spoke, like he needed permission. Marley quit the part-time job she'd had and stayed home with Luna. Simon worked constantly to support them. She controlled all the money because she said he wasn't good with finances, which was a lie. Simon had always been careful with money, but she convinced him he couldn't be trusted with it. She made all the decisions about where they lived, what they bought, who they saw. He just went along with whatever she wanted because that was easier than fighting. My niece Luna is 3 now. Every visit is supervised by Marley, who controls the entire interaction. If my mom tries to take Luna to another room, Marley suddenly needs to change her diaper. If my dad tries to have a private conversation with Simon, Marley appears out of nowhere with some urgent question. We can't get him alone. Ever. About 6 months ago, I tried a different approach. I reached out to Simon directly and asked if he wanted to get lunch, just us like we used to do when he was in high school. He agreed, but then canceled last minute because something came up with Luna. I tried again a week later. Same thing. I tried 4 more times over the next month, and every single time he canceled within hours of when we were supposed to meet. The 5th time, I decided to just show up at the restaurant anyway. I sat there for an hour hoping he might come. He didn't. But about 40 minutes in, I got a text from him that just said, "Sorry, can't make it. Marley needs me home." And then immediately after, a text from Marley's number that said, "Please stop harassing my husband. He doesn't want to see you." I saved both of those texts. I have a folder on my phone now of every weird interaction, every canceled plan. Every time he said something that sounded like her words coming out of his mouth. I'm not documenting for any legal reason. I just needed to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining things. My parents have basically given up on direct contact. They send birthday cards and Christmas presents and get polite thank you texts that definitely sound like Marley wrote them. My mom cries about it constantly. My dad has gone full avoidance mode where he just doesn't talk about Simon at all. Like maybe if he ignores it, the problem will solve itself. Last week, my mom got a text from Marley announcing that she's pregnant again. Second baby due in 6 months. And the text included what my mom called an invitation, but what I would call a ransom demand. Marley said she'd been thinking about family and forgiveness, and she wanted to give us a chance to be part of her children's lives. All we had to do was apologize. For what exactly? For interfering in their relationship? For trying to break them up? For not trusting her love for Simon? For making her feel unwelcome in our family? She wants a formal apology from both of my parents, acknowledged in front of Simon, before she'll allow us regular access to Luna and the new baby. My mom is actually considering it. She told me yesterday that she's been talking to my dad about it, and they think maybe it's worth it. Just to have their son back. Just to be able to see their grandchildren. She said sometimes you have to swallow your pride for family. I told her she couldn't be serious. That apologizing to Marley means telling Simon that we were wrong all along. That it validates everything she did. That it gives her even more power over him, because now his own parents are admitting she was right. My mom just looked at me with these tired, defeated eyes and said she didn't know what else to do. I don't either. I keep thinking about the brother I used to have. The one who would text me random memes at midnight. The one who came to my college graduation even though he was 15 and bored out of his mind. And now my parents are about to hand her a complete victory just for the chance to hold their grandchildren. I can't let this happen. I can't watch my family apologize to this woman. But I also can't figure out what else to do. Every time I try to intervene, I feel like I make things worse. Every time I pull back, nothing changes. I'm completely stuck. And I'm watching everyone I love either give up or get manipulated. And I don't know how to stop it. Update 1. I didn't expect my first post to get the attention it did. I read every single comment and message, even the ones calling me dramatic or saying I should mind my own business. Some of you asked questions that made me realize I left out important details, so I'm going to try to fill in those gaps while also updating on what happened next. First, the backstory stuff I didn't explain well enough. A lot of people asked about the timeline and whether anything happened before Simon turned 18. Honestly, I don't know for sure. What I know is that Marley was around constantly when he was 17, and I never thought anything of it because she was my friend there to see me. But looking back, there were moments. Her offering to drive him somewhere when I was busy. Remembering details about his life that I'd never told her. Buying him a birthday present that was weirdly thoughtful for someone who was supposedly just her friend's little brother. When I confronted her about this years later, during one of our few heated conversations, she insisted nothing physical happened until he was legal. She said she waited. Like that made it better. Like waiting until the exact day society says you can't go to prison for it somehow erases the months of building emotional dependency in a teenager. Several people asked about Marley's life situation when all this started. I mentioned she'd just been dumped by a guy her age, but I didn't fully explain how much that truly mattered. Marley, at 24, was not in a good place. She had no real career, just random part-time stuff that she constantly complained about. She lived in a tiny apartment she could barely afford. She had friends, sure, but there was always drama with them. Always someone who wronged her or didn't appreciate her enough. She talked constantly about wanting to feel valued. Wanting someone who would put her first. Wanting a relationship where she wasn't always competing for attention. Guys her age didn't give her that. They had jobs and friends and hobbies and opinions. They pushed back when she was being unreasonable. They expected her to have her own life too. Simon had none of that. He was 18 with no girlfriend history. No real social life outside of 2 friends who were drifting away. Living at home with no clear plans. He thought Marley was the most amazing person he'd ever met. When she talked, he listened like she was revealing the secrets of the universe. When she wanted attention, he gave it completely. When she made suggestions, he followed them without question. She didn't just want a boyfriend. She wanted someone she could shape into exactly what she needed. Someone who would never challenge her or leave her or make her feel less than. Simon was that person. Okay, so the update. After my first post, I decided I couldn't just sit around while my parents debated apologizing to Marley. I needed to at least try talking to Simon one more time. But I knew the direct approach wouldn't work, because she monitors everything. So I got creative. My dad has this storage unit across town where he keeps old furniture and boxes of stuff from when we were kids. Simon has a key because years ago he helped move stuff in there and just never gave it back. I figured Marley didn't know about the storage unit. It's never come up. It's just this random family thing that exists. I texted Simon and said I needed help moving a heavy box from the storage unit, and could he meet me there Saturday morning. I specifically didn't mention talking or hanging out or anything emotional. Just a favor. Physical labor. Something he could explain to Marley as helping family with a chore. He said yes. I got there an hour early because I was so anxious I couldn't sit at home. When he pulled up, I barely recognized him at first. He'd lost weight. Not a lot, but enough that his clothes looked slightly too big. He was driving Marley's car, which I noticed because he used to have his own, this old Mazda that he'd saved up for and fixed up himself over 2 summers. When I asked about it later, he said they sold it because they didn't need 2 cars. And Marley didn't like him being able to go places without her knowing. He didn't say that last part, but I heard it anyway. We did actually move a box first because I wanted him to feel like the reason he came was real. Then I asked if he wanted to sit for a minute, and he said sure, but he couldn't stay long because Marley was expecting him back by 11 o'clock. It was 9:30 in the morning on a Saturday. She'd given him a 90-minute window to help his sister. I didn't yell. I didn't lecture. I just asked him how he was doing. Really doing. and for about 10 seconds I saw my brother. The real one. His face did this thing where the mask almost slipped and he looked so tired. So unbelievably tired. He started to say something, and then his phone buzzed. He checked it immediately. Whatever was on the screen made him sit up straighter, and suddenly the walls were back up. He told me he was fine. Everything was great. Marley was a wonderful mother, and he was lucky to have her. It sounded rehearsed, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized. I asked him about his life, not about Marley, just about him. What was he doing for fun these days? Did he still play those games he used to love? Was he still in touch with his old friends? Did he ever do anything just for himself? He couldn't answer any of it. He kept circling back to Luna, to the new baby coming, to how busy they were, to how Marley needed him at home. Every question about him got redirected to her. I asked him directly if he was happy. He said, of course he was happy. He had a beautiful daughter and another baby on the way and a wife who loved him. What more could he want? I said, that wasn't what I asked. I asked if he was happy, not if his life looked good on paper. Not if Marley was happy. Him. Simon, my brother. Was he happy? He couldn't look at me. He stared at the concrete floor of that storage unit, and I watched him try to formulate an answer and fail. He kept starting sentences and stopping. Finally, he said he didn't really think about it like that. He said happiness was a choice and he chose to be grateful for what he had. That's not something Simon would say. That's something someone taught him to say when people asked too many questions. I told him I was worried about him, that our family was worried, that we weren't trying to control him or break up his marriage. We just wanted to be part of his life again. I told him I missed him. The real him. The one who used to send me stupid memes at 2 a.m. and argue with me about which pizza toppings were acceptable, and helped me practice for job interviews even though he was just a kid. For a second I thought he was going to say something real. His eyes got this look in them like he was trying to break through something. Then his phone buzzed again. Marley. Asking where he was and when he'd be home. He said he had to go. That she needed help with Luna. That the baby was making her tired. And he couldn't leave her alone too long. I asked if we could do this again next week. Just help me with another box. No big conversation, just some time together. He said, maybe. Then he got in Marley's car and drove away. And I sat in that storage unit parking lot trying to figure out what just happened. That night, I went to my parents' house and told them everything. My mom kept saying things like, at least he showed up, and at least he talked to you. Which technically was true but felt like setting the bar underground. My dad was quiet through most of it. And then he said something that really got to me. He said he'd been thinking about Marley's apology demand, and he'd come to a decision. He wasn't going to do it. Not because he didn't want to see his grandchildren, but because he finally realized that apologizing wouldn't actually give us Simon back. It would just give Marley permission to take even more. He said she wasn't offering reconciliation. She was collecting surrender documents. My dad explained his thinking and it made a horrible kind of sense. Marley doesn't want a relationship with our family. She wants to win. She wants Simon to see his own parents admit that she was right and they were wrong. She wants to cement in his mind forever that his family tried to destroy his happiness and then had to apologize for it. Once that happens, anytime Simon has doubts about her, anytime he thinks about reaching out to us, she can remind him of the apology. She can say, see? Even your parents admitted they were wrong about me. I asked what we were going to do instead and he said he didn't know yet. But he knew what we weren't going to do. I went home that night feeling like something had shifted, but not knowing if it was good or bad. My dad taking a stand was huge, but it also meant we were officially refusing Marley's terms, and she had all the leverage. 2 days later, my mom did something behind my dad's back. She texted Marley privately and asked if there was any way they could work something out, just the two of them without involving the whole family drama. She thought maybe woman to woman she could find some common ground. She told Marley she understood what it was like to feel unwelcome in a family, that when she'd married my dad, his mother had been cold to her for years, and she didn't want to be that kind of mother-in-law. She was trying to connect, trying to find the human being inside Marley, trying to build a bridge. Marley's response? A screenshot of my mom's text, sent to Simon with the caption, "Look how your mother is trying to manipulate me behind your back." She's going around you to get to me because she knows you'd say no. Simon called my mom that night. Or rather, Marley called from Simon's phone and put him on speaker. What followed was 20 minutes of my brother saying things that clearly came from Marley, while Marley added commentary in the background. He said my mom was sneaky, that she'd always been sneaky, that she'd tried to break up his relationship from the beginning, and now she was still doing it. He said she was trying to turn his wife against him. He said he was done giving his family chances to accept Marley. He asked why they couldn't just be happy for him. Why everything had to be a fight, why they kept treating Marley like a villain when she was just trying to protect their family. My mom tried to explain. She apologized for going around him. She said she was just desperate to find a solution. She said she loved him and she loved Luna, and she just wanted to be part of their lives. She asked what she had to do, what any of them had to do to make this work. Simon's response was that they'd already told her what to do. Apologize. Accept Marley. Stop acting like something was wrong with his marriage. That was it. That was the price of admission. My mom asked if there was any room for conversation, any way to talk about this in person? Maybe just the three of them without everyone else involved. Simon started to respond, but Marley's voice cut in, saying they'd already tried that and it didn't work. And maybe if the family could show some basic respect, they could talk about Luna's birthday party next month. Luna's birthday. She dangled it like a treat for a dog that's been misbehaving. The call ended shortly after, with Marley saying she hoped everyone could think about what they really wanted, and whether their pride was worth more than their grandchildren. My mom was destroyed. She called me sobbing, convinced she'd ruined everything, that her attempt to help had made everything worse. I tried to tell her that Marley would have found something to use against us regardless, that if it wasn't the text it would have been something else, but she wasn't hearing it. A week went by then too. My dad maintained his position about not apologizing. My mom fluctuated between agreeing with him and crying about Luna. I tried the storage unit thing one more time, but Simon didn't respond to my text at all. Then 4 days before Luna's birthday, my mom got another text from Marley. Not a demand this time, an invitation. Marley said she'd been thinking about family and forgiveness, and she wanted Luna to know her grandparents. The party would be Saturday at 2 p.m. at their apartment. Family was welcome, as long as everyone could behave appropriately. Behave appropriately. Like we were the ones who needed to be managed. My mom was immediately ready to go. She didn't care if it was a trap. She didn't care about the weird wording. She was going to see her granddaughter on her birthday, and nothing was going to stop her. My dad refused. He said he wasn't going to walk into Marley's territory and pretend everything was fine just for the privilege of being watched while he talked to his own son. He called it a hostage viewing. They had a massive fight about it the night before the party. My mom accusing him of being stubborn and proud. My dad saying she was being naive and desperate. Got ugly. Neither of them changed their minds. Saturday came and my mom and I drove to the party together. She'd spent hours picking out the perfect gift, wrapping it with a handmade bow, practicing what she'd say to Luna, planning how she'd act around Marley. She was nervous in a way I'd never seen her, checking her reflection constantly, asking me if she seemed calm. The apartment complex was normal, nothing fancy. We found parking and walked to their building, and I could feel my mom shaking slightly when we reached the door. Marley answered, smiling, warm, hugging my mom like they were old friends, welcoming us into the apartment like we were honored guests. The whole place was decorated for a 4-year-old's birthday party. Pink streamers and balloons and a banner with Luna's name in glittery letters. There were about 8 other people there. Marley's friends and some people I didn't recognize. Luna was in the middle of the living room, playing with another little girl her age. She'd gotten so big. The last time I'd seen her she was barely walking. And now she was this whole person, with pigtails and a princess dress and opinions about things. I wanted to run over and scoop her up, but I held back because I knew Marley was watching everything. Simon was in the kitchen. He came out when he heard our voices, and for a second his face showed something real, something like relief or happiness, before it shut down again. He greeted us formally, almost like we were distant relatives he was obligated to acknowledge. He called our mom ma'am instead of mom. He didn't look at me at all. The whole party was like that. Marley controlling every interaction. inserting herself into every conversation, redirecting any moment that might become too genuine. When my mom talked to Luna, Marley hovered. When I tried to talk to Simon, Marley appeared out of nowhere with some question or request. We couldn't get a single unmonitored moment with either of them. About an hour in, Marley pulled me aside. Just the two of us in the corner of the living room, while everyone else was focused on some game with the kids. She asked if I was enjoying myself. I said I was enjoying seeing Luna. She smiled and said Luna was such a blessing and she was so grateful that Simon gave her such a beautiful daughter and would soon give her another. The way she said, gave her, like Simon's only function was providing her with children. I asked her what she actually wanted. Not the party line about family and forgiveness, but what she actually wanted from us. She looked at me for a long moment, and then said she wanted what she'd always wanted. Respect, acceptance, a family that treated her like she belonged instead of like a threat. I told her that respect was earned, and she'd spent 5 years isolating my brother from everyone who loved him. She told me I had a very limited perspective on the situation, that from her point of view, she'd spent 5 years protecting her husband from a family that tried to destroy his happiness. She said Simon chose her, that he continued to choose her every day, that whatever story I'd invented about her controlling him was just my way of not accepting that he didn't want us in his life anymore. I asked her if Simon really didn't want us, or if she just made sure he never had the chance to find out. She told me quietly that I needed to be very careful, that she'd extended an olive branch, and I was close to breaking it. She reminded me that Simon's loyalty was to her and their children. She said if I kept pushing, I would lose access not just to Simon but to Luna and the new baby forever. Then she walked away to go help with the cake. The cake happened. Marley made a speech about family and blessings and announced the pregnancy to everyone like it was news, even though we already knew. She stood next to Simon with her hand on her stomach, and he stood there like a prop, smiling on cue, saying the right things at the right moments. Luna opened presents, and when she got to my mom's gift, she lit up because it was genuinely a good present, something my mom had thought hard about. Luna said, "Thank you, Grandma." And my mom burst into quiet tears. It was the first time Luna had acknowledged her as Grandma out loud. That one moment was worth the entire awful party. Before we left, I managed to get close to Simon one more time. I told him I loved him, that our family loved him, that no matter what happened, no matter what Marley told him about us, we would always be here if he needed us. On the drive home, my mom talked about how wonderful it was to see Luna, how maybe things were getting better, how she thought she and Marley had connected during one of their conversations. I didn't tell her about what Marley had actually said to me. I didn't want to crush her hope, but I knew the truth. That party wasn't a reconciliation. It was a demonstration. Marley wanted us to see exactly how much power she had and how little we could do about it. 2 days later, I got a text from Simon's number. "Don't contact me again. You upset Marley at the party and I can't have that negativity around Luna. She doesn't need that energy." Energy. She used that word during our conversation. She probably wrote the text herself. My mom doesn't know about it yet. I'm going to have to tell her eventually, but I'm not giving up. Last update. This is probably going to be my last post about this for a while. I'm emotionally exhausted, and I think writing about this constantly isn't helping me or Simon. After the birthday party and that text telling me not to contact him anymore, I actually listened. Not because I wanted to, but because everyone kept telling me that pushing harder when someone is being controlled just makes them dig in deeper. The more I pulled, the more Marley would pull back. So I stopped. My parents stopped too. My mom quit sending her weekly texts. My dad stopped whatever research he'd been doing. We all just existed in this awful limbo where we thought about Simon constantly but didn't reach out. Every family dinner felt wrong. Every holiday was missing something. We didn't even put up his stocking at Christmas because it felt too painful to look at it empty. 3 weeks after the birthday party, Simon showed up at my apartment. No warning, no text, just knocking on my door at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. I opened it and there he was. Alone. No Marley. I just stepped back and let him in because I was terrified that if I spoke, I'd break whatever fragile thing had gotten him there. He sat on my couch and didn't talk for a long time. I made him water because I didn't know what else to do. His hands shook when he took the glass. Then he started talking. He told me Marley had been having a bad week. Something with one of her friends. Some drama I didn't follow. And she'd been taking it out on him. He was quick to say she wasn't hitting him. Like he needed to defend her even while admitting something was wrong. But she'd been criticizing everything he did. How he loaded the dishwasher. How he talked to Luna. How he breathed too loud when she was trying to rest. He said he was used to it. He'd learned how to manage her moods. How to be smaller and quieter until she calmed down. But this time Luna got caught in it. Marley snapped at Luna for something stupid, spilling juice or being too loud. And Luna started crying and asking why Mommy was so mad at her. Asking what she did wrong. Simon said watching his 3-year-old daughter blame herself for her mother's mood broke something in him. He recognized it. The confusion. The desperate need to figure out what you did wrong so you can fix it. The way your whole body tenses when someone's in a bad mood. Because you know it's going to land on you somehow. He asked me if I thought he'd made a mistake. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every single thing Marley had done. The grooming, the threats, the isolation, the control. But I didn't. I asked him what he thought. He couldn't answer. He kept starting sentences and stopping. He said he loved Marley, that she'd given him Luna, that she was carrying his second child. But he also said he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt like himself. He said sometimes he'd catch his reflection and not recognize the person looking back. He said he used to be someone, and now he was just Marley's husband and Luna's dad, and he didn't know who Simon was anymore. I asked him what he wanted to do. He said he didn't know. He couldn't leave because of the kids. Because where would he even go? Because Marley would destroy him if he tried. He still believed in that threat from years ago. He told me she reminded him of it. Sometimes. Not directly, just little comments about how people always believe women and how his word against hers would never win. I told him that was how abusers kept people trapped, making them think they had no option so they stopped looking. He flinched when I said abuser. He said Marley wasn't abusive. She was just intense. She just had high expectations. She just loved hard and needed a lot of reassurance. I asked him to say that again and really listen to himself. He couldn't. We talked for almost 2 hours. Not lecturing. Just talking like we used to when we were kids. I didn't try to convince him to leave. I just asked questions and let him hear his own answers. I asked about the car he loved that she made him sell. About the friends he lost touch with. About the last time he made a decision without checking with her first. About what he thought Luna was learning by watching their relationship. Around midnight, he said he needed to go before she noticed how long he'd been gone. He told her he was getting diapers. That's his cover story now. Diapers. He has to lie to his wife to have a conversation with his sister. Before he left, I told him our door was always open. That no matter what he decided, no matter how this went, he was my brother, and I loved him and nothing would change that. Not Marley, not time, not anything. He hugged me. Really hugged me. Not the stiff, awkward ones from supervised visits. He held on for a long time and I could feel him shaking slightly. Then he left. Went back to her. That was 3 weeks ago. He's still there. Nothing has changed from the outside. Marley is still pregnant. Luna is still being raised in that house. Simon still doesn't answer texts or calls unless Marley approves them. My parents know about the visit. My dad said we need to be patient. I'm trying to be. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I keep thinking about what he said. That Luna blamed herself when Marley was angry. That's the cycle starting all over again. Marley is creating another generation of people who think her moods are their responsibility. I don't know if Simon will ever leave. I don't know if he'll call again or if that night was a one-time crack that Marley has already sealed back up, but I know he came to me. That has to mean something. To everyone who followed this and sent messages and told me not to give up, thank you. I'll update if anything changes. For now, I'm just holding on to that hug and waiting. Have you ever had to choose between fighting for someone you love and letting them go to keep a tiny sliver of hope alive? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on what you would do in my shoes.